In the summer of 1943, the German High Command stood at a crossroads. The lightning victories of the early war were gone. The Eastern Front had hardened into a brutal, grinding struggle. Yet Berlin still believed in one final decisive strike, a blow so powerful it would shatter Soviet resistance and restore the initiative. The chosen battlefield was the vast salient around Kursk. The operation was ambitious, almost desperate. It would rely not just on strategy, but on technology, on a new generation of German armored power. At the heart of this plan stood two machines that symbolized German engineering confidence: the Panther tank and the Tiger I. On paper, they were unmatched. Their guns could destroy enemy tanks at distances where Soviet crews could barely respond. Their armor could withstand most incoming fire. Their optics and precision were the envy of every army in the world. But war is not fought on paper. When the Battle of Kursk began on July 5, 1943, German forces moved forward with confidence. Among them were nearly 200 newly deployed Panthers, rushed into service with the expectation that they would break Soviet lines. Instead, many of them never even reached the battlefield. Within hours, reports began to filter back. Engines overheated under the summer heat. Fuel pumps malfunctioned. Transmission systems failed without warning. Some tanks caught fire due to design flaws. Others simply stopped moving, their crews forced to abandon them on the roadside. Mechanics worked desperately behind the lines, trying to repair vehicles under pressure. But the problems were too widespread. By July 10th, just 5 days into the offensive, the number of operational Panthers had dropped dramatically, not because of Soviet fire, but because of mechanical failure. German commanders were stunned. The very machines meant to secure victory were becoming liabilities. The crisis reached its peak near the village of Prokhorovka on July 12, 1943. Here, German armored units, including the formidable Tiger I tanks, collided with massive Soviet formations in what would become one of the largest tank battles in history. The Tigers performed as expected, at least at first. From long distances, they destroyed Soviet tanks with lethal precision. Their crews, experienced and disciplined, exploited every advantage their machines offered. But the battlefield was chaotic. The Soviets did not fight on German terms. Instead of staying at range, they charged forward, closing the distance rapidly. At close quarters, the Tigers' advantages diminished. Their slow turret traverse and limited numbers made them vulnerable to flanking attacks. Dust, smoke, and confusion filled the air. Communication broke down. German formations, designed for controlled engagements, found themselves overwhelmed in a swirling, close-range fight. The Tigers were not defeated in a single moment. They were worn down, surrounded, isolated, and gradually pushed back. Technology alone could not restore control. Despite the setbacks at Kursk, German leadership did not abandon its faith in heavy armor. Instead, it doubled down. In 1944, a new tank entered service, the Tiger II, also known as the King Tiger. Weighing nearly 70 tons, it was the heaviest and most powerful tank Germany had ever produced. Its armor was thicker, its gun even more devastating. On paper, it was invincible, but the battlefield had changed. Following the Normandy landings in June 1944, Allied forces pushed inland through France. German units rushed to respond, deploying their new heavy tanks in an attempt to halt the advance. Almost immediately, problems emerged. The Tiger II was too heavy for many bridges, forcing crews to take longer routes or risk collapse. Its engines struggled under the weight, leading to frequent breakdowns. Fuel consumption was enormous, at a time when Germany was already facing severe shortages. Allied aircraft roamed the skies with increasing dominance. Heavy tanks, slow and difficult to conceal, became prime targets. A single air attack could immobilize an entire column. Again and again, German crews faced the same bitter choice: abandon their tank or destroy it themselves to prevent capture. Many chose the latter. By the end of 1944, Germany's situation had become critical. Yet one final offensive was planned, a bold attempt to split Allied forces in the West and force a negotiated peace. It began on December 16, 1944, in the forests of the Ardennes, in what became known as the Battle of the Bulge. Once again, heavy tanks played a central role. At first, the attack achieved surprise. German forces advanced through the snow-covered terrain, catching Allied units off guard. But the initial success masked deeper problems. The narrow roads of the Ardennes quickly became congested. Heavy tanks clogged the routes, creating traffic jams that slowed the entire advance. Recovery vehicles struggled to reach broken-down machines. Fuel shortages worsened by the day. Then came the weather. When the skies cleared, Allied aircraft returned in force. German columns, exposed and immobilized, were attacked relentlessly. Supply lines collapsed. Units ran out of fuel before reaching their objectives. Some of the most powerful tanks ever built were left standing silent in the snow, their engines cold, their crews gone. The offensive failed. By early 1945, it was clear that Germany could no longer sustain the war. Its industry was crippled. Its armies were exhausted. Its technological edge, once so feared, had been eroded by the realities of modern warfare. The heavy tanks that once symbolized strength had become symbols of a deeper problem. They were too complex to produce in large numbers, too difficult to maintain in the field, too demanding in fuel and logistics. In isolated engagements, they could still dominate. But wars are not decided by isolated engagements. They are decided by systems, by the ability to produce, supply, repair, and adapt. Germany had built extraordinary machines, but it had built them for a kind of war that no longer existed. When the war in Europe ended in May 1945, the wrecks of German heavy tanks lay scattered across the continent, from the plains near Kursk to the forests of the Ardennes. Each one told the same story. They were not failures of engineering. In many ways, they were masterpieces. They were failures of understanding. Germany had pursued perfection in firepower and protection, believing that superior machines could overcome any obstacle. But in doing so, it overlooked the simpler, harsher truth. In war, reliability often matters more than brilliance. And in the end, it was not the strongest tank that won, but the army that could keep moving.